that is magical, and then there's some magical shit that human beings have been able to pull off to make it even more magical. And like, it doesn't need to be one or the other. With things, you can appreciate both. You can study the history and learn from it, and you can also study the setting and environment and preserve it. You know, those two things should be hand in hand. Not even like the Bloods and Crips meme either. Like, they should just be friends in general.
Yeah, I totally agree.
You know, but the Aztecs get taken out quickly. You know,
very quickly,
by the Spanish, and then disease spreads, and then, you know, the Spanish obviously pretty much colonized Mexico, and you fast forward and you get to somewhere somehow how we got to today. But you had put a pin in the Mayans, but in particularly the Olmecs and that whole history. I know that's something like, one of the things I love about you is that you are constantly traveling to all these places to go see it for yourself. And it's like a quest too. Like, you're always dressed the part too. I really appreciate that. But, you know, you've gone down and looked at a lot of the Olmec ruins and the places where they existed. And it, to me, the Olmecs, we talked about it in episode 175 a little bit, but it's a very, among the ignored parts that we already highlighted, the fact that South America seems to be so ignored in a lot of these history discussions, ancient history discussions these days. The Olmecs are passed over so much. So for people out there who really have no idea what their origins were and who they were and what the civilization was like, can you just give the download on the Olmec people and their base history?
Yeah. So the Olmecs, man, incredibly ancient. It's the origins of Mesoamerica. Now, the basics of Mesoamerica is basically everything below the Rio Grande. So below Texas is essentially the most northern edge of Mesoamerica. And it continues all the way through Mexico into Honduras, Nicaragua, El Salvador, and it kind of fades out as you get closer to Panama. That's essentially Mesoamerica. And this has been my central area of expertise for quite a long time now. You know, it was what I studied in college and got my anthropology degree in. And this was the world that opened up to me. I'm fascinated by it, and it's infinitely complex. But on the Veracruz coast, which is to the west of the Maya realm, to the east of where the Aztecs will later be, there is a river that connects to the Gulf of Mexico, or the Gulf of America, as some people call it now. It's called the Coatzacoalcos River. You know, I actually get a lot of flack for that, because I make custom maps for my videos, and I still call it the Gulf of Mexico.
And you get flack for that?
Yeah. People will be like, no, it's the Gulf of America.
It's just a logistical nightmare, though.
I'm like, guys, you know what? I'm just gonna stick with tradition here. It's been the Gulf of Mexico for like 500 years.
It was fun to say.
Yeah.
You know.
So, I'm not switching up because one guy says so. Yeah, I agree.
That's right.
So anyways, yeah. So it's the Coatzacoalcos River connects to the Gulf of Mexico, and along this river, it's essentially like, think of the Coatzacoalcos River as the Nile River that the Egyptians, the Nile River gave the Egyptians their civilization. We did this whole rundown last time. It's not of the credit of the Egyptians, it's of the credit of the Nile. The Nile just gifted these riches to the Egyptians. So the Coatzacoalcos River just gifts all of this fertile land to the Olmecs. And in fact, I brought a group of students with me in December, and we went to San Lorenzo Tenochtitlan, which is the first capital, really the central metropolitan area of the Olmec world. And it's way up on top of this hill, and as you look down the hill towards the Coatzacoalcos River and these alluvial floodplains where all of their maize crops or their corn would grow, I took a photo of it, dude. If I were to show an Egyptian that photo, they would think that I took a photo of somewhere in Egypt. It's that similar. It's just, and I've been to other Fertile Crescents as well and looked at it, and I'm like, oh wow, these all have the same similarities. It's these low valleys where the river consistently floods and it has, creates this alluvial, fertile plain. And this is how civilization begins. It's it was fascinating seeing that. So the Olmec world begins at San Lorenzo Tenochtitlan. It's the Fertile Crescent of Mexico. It's the most overlooked Fertile Crescent of the entire world. I mean, you have 7 Fertile Crescents. Mexico is the most overlooked one. It begins with San Lorenzo Tenochtitlan about 3,800 years ago. So 1800 BC, I should say. And so the Olmecs essentially, they get their rise from, they have port cities as well that are actually on the Gulf, and San Lorenzo is inland a little bit along the river. And so they're sailing out on the coast and they're fishing. They have, all types of resources from their ability to catch fish as well as raise corn. So they're just booming. They essentially rise before everybody else, and they just mastered agriculture before any of the other cultures in Mesoamerica even get started. And what's really crazy is it seems like right at the beginning of their civilization, they're able to quarry these 60-ton stones, these 60-ton solid basalt stones out of the Sierra de la Tuxtla volcanic belt to their northeast, and quarry them and transport them 90 miles away to this city and carve and erect these massive Olmec heads. And it's like they're doing this from the very beginning of their society. There is no, from what we can tell through the archaeology, there's no lead up to this. There's no developmental period before they're able to do this. They're just doing it from the very beginning. So we could look up I don't know if you have, my eyesight's not that great, but just Olmec heads or something.
Yeah, they're insane.
It's
How
crazy.
much did you say they weighed?
So this is okay. So this is a really cool mystery about the Olmec heads. So
Looks like a pulling garden.
oh, it's crazy. Yeah, it's beautiful, man. There's 17 known heads, but there's actually 3 more heads that most people have never seen, but they're made out of sandstone, and they're not even human. They're like were-jaguar, half human, half jaguar faces. Yeah, we'll get into this. It's really, really cool. This is actually something that connects to South America and Peru, by the way.
Okay.
And I think it has its origins in the Amazon. This is kind of my other area that I'm looking into.
Interesting.
So you asked about how much they weigh. So get this. So the Maya Exploration Center, of which I'm a member of, this is run by my mentor, Dr. Ed Barnhart. On one of his Olmec expeditions, he had a nautical engineer that was traveling with him who was fascinated by this idea of how did the Olmecs transport these heads. So he created this algorithm that you could put in I'm not exactly sure what it was, a software or a site or something, where you could input the theoretical weight of your Olmec head and the theoretical size of your balsa river raft. And he found that if you made the raft too big to go down the narrow stretches of the Coatzacoalcos River, and you put a 5-ton head on that raft, it would flip the raft and sink it. Okay.
So the engineering has
so going back over this, if it's too long and too wide to go down the narrow stretches of the river to actually make it to the city, it's already too big to go down the river, and you put a 5-ton head on it, it would sink the raft. The smallest head is 6 tons, and the largest head is 52 tons. So nobody knows exactly how these things were transported. It's just all archaeologists have quietly known. What's your idea? Aliens. Could be.
Well, UFO came down.
See, that would be the easiest way to do this.
That's what I'm saying. It makes the most sense.
But see, the problem with the alien thing is we have to figure out, the aliens come down and then Native Americans are like, please, we're starving. Our children are dying. We need something like penicillin. And they're like, no. We'll teach you. You need these rocks.
Right.
We'll lift the rocks for you.
Because then they can pray to something.
Yeah, then they can pray to something.
And have their soul saved.
Yeah.
Because the real life happens after that on Earth.
Could be.
See?
Could be.
I already got all the holes filled in.
I know you do.
You're not going to plug these.
I think you've been plugging the aliens every episode.
Not every episode. There's a lot of misinformation out there. But when we look at the ancient world, there's some stuff that I'm like, come on. some have.
You know what? I actually have to agree with you. I kind of like when I think of like little green men and spaceships, I kind of roll my eyes at that idea. But at the same time, then I also find myself like as a religious person, I find myself studying ancient people and I see the bizarre things that they come up with and the things that they believe and the things that they, have this conviction about. Yeah. And, there's two entire eras of Maya civilization where they give no credit to any single person for anything, and they dedicate every temple to a god and never lift up one person. It's like they do it all for the gods. The Egyptians seem to do everything for the gods. There were Greeks who literally actually believed that the gods exist. Well, I mean, most Greeks did. It was only the philosophers that started kind of questioning whether or not the gods existed. But, you see so many ancient cultures go so far out of their way for their gods. It just makes me think like, okay, what is actually the answer to this? Is it that people are just looking for something, like they're looking for an answer, so they kind of just make something up? Do they make it all up to be able to control the people beneath them? Or does it make more sense that these people were so convicted by their beliefs because what they were experiencing actually happened to them? And it's like, what's the line between an ancient person taking some kind of natural hallucinogen and interacting with a deity while he's in that space,
right,
and an alien? What's the weird line that you draw there?
It gets weird, man.
And like okay, I'm saying this as a very self-aware Christian. Where does like Christianity fit in this?
Sure.
It's a fascinating thing. And so I agree with you. I laugh about the alien stuff, but then I also have to remind myself like, well, my hot take about the ancient world is that I actually think it's more likely that it's not all made up.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoy joking about it in all seriousness, and I wonder what the hell's out there in this giant galaxy that we have no idea the ends of it and all that stuff. But we live in this world, especially when it comes to religion, where people want to make things everything or nothing, right? Religion is at the top of that sphere.
Yeah, it is.
And there's all these different world religions, and then there's these different stories and different interpretations and different translations and different characters and different, I could go on down the list, right? And to me, it's like, where are there themes that it's like, oh, wait a minute. And that lines up with that a little bit. That lines up with that a little bit. Maybe there's some sort of truth there, even if it's a different experience. And then you get to the way that conscious human beings have the ability to experience things. I've talked to you about my friend Riz Verk. So he was on episode 274 with me. At the time of this recording, we just recorded a new one. I haven't put it out yet, but it's definitely out now if you're watching this podcast right now. But, he's an MIT simulation theorist, absolute genius, great guy too. And he's thinking about, some of the most unanswerable questions there are, which have to do with the mathematical probability and scientific evidence for the idea that things exist as 0 and 1s around us, and our consciousness just can't understand that. And one of the many things that he talks about is that when it comes to like UFO sightings or anything that has to do with an alien or something not of this earth that appears in written record or oral record throughout human history, it's like it's possible, and it's even been reported this way, that there are people who can be standing next to each other in the same place and only one person witnesses something supernatural going on. The other person doesn't see it at all. So something in this person's consciousness is transcribed to just a little bit of a different frequency. That's not the word to use, but it's set to just a little bit of a different frequency than the other person, that it allows them to see this and experience this, and then maybe get whatever information comes from that. So if you look at things like the pyramids that pop up in all these different places and civilizations that were stuck in different time periods basically over time, and when you look at some unexplainable stuff like the Olmec heads and things like that, where is there potentially some divine intervention? We know there's a lot of world leaders that have liked to lie about, oh, I got talked to by the gods, therefore you got to worship me, and they're full of shit. But which ones weren't? Which ones actually did have some sort of prophet seeing through to whatever the other side is. I don't care what that is, whether that's God, whether it's simulation, whether it's aliens, whether it's future I don't know.
Yeah.
But you have to at least, as crazy as it sounds, and it sounds fucking insane to even say it out loud, but you have to ask these questions when you're looking at some amazing innovations that ancient civilizations did, where we have evidence that like they didn't have iPhones. They didn't have something that's totally different than an iPhone, but technologically equivalent to that. Yet they were able to pull something like this off. There is something there, man.
Oh, I totally agree with you. I actually think, I really think that the answer to a lot of this is going to be found in God, I don't even know what we would call it, like psychedelic archaeology.
Psychedelic archaeology.
I don't know. I just made that up. But I think that once this boomer generation of archaeologists moves on.
I love that. Was a very nice Texas Christian boy way of saying that.
Yeah. Now, I'm not going to discredit archaeologists. They all do, basically all of them do amazing work. There are people who make their public opinions known that are very bad public opinions, but vast majority of archaeologists work super hard jobs and achieve a lot for very little credit. However, it's impossible for our preconceived notions of our modern day reality to not bleed into our profession, right? So I can't tell you how many archaeologists I have spoken to and tried to talk to them about the psychedelics that the culture of which they are an expert in was partaking in. And, I met an archaeoastronomer, spent a week with him. And
an archaeoastronomer.
Yeah, archaeoastronomy. It's kind of a new
what a flex.
It's a new frontier of archaeology. It's essentially the study of ancient cultures' interaction with the night sky. So trying to study ancient astronomers and what they understood about the night sky and how that can further reinform and change our perspective on the culture that we're studying or the ancient sites that we're looking at. Like, you may not understand why this building is not lined exactly to true north and why it's 15 degrees off, and why is this building also 15 degrees off, but yet the retaining wall is facing a different direction. Yada, yada, yada. Well, if you were able to unlock the secrets of the city, you would realize that each of the orientation of these buildings and walls had a purpose that was facing towards the night sky or the sun, and that shadows and knives of light would like shine through the buildings, and they're all astronomical solar clocks. It's crazy stuff, dude. Like it's really, really in depth. Now, I had this realization in like 2021. I did some edibles with my buddy, and we're laying down, looking underneath the.
I hope you did mood.
I don't know.
They were mood. They just say it for the camera. They were mood, right?
They were mood. No, I don't know.
For our sponsorships. Deef and I enjoy. Anyway, please continue.
So I'm laying there looking at the night sky, and I must have taken like 30 milligrams or something, and I'm blasting off, and I'm laying there, and after a couple hours, like, I've lost my ego. I'm no longer me anymore. I'm just one with the night sky and with the universe, and I'm like looking at a photo of myself and not even looking at it as though it's me. I just can't even believe that that's my body that I exist inside of, and it makes you have all these realizations about yourself and the things you need to fix about yourself. It's very medicinal, the whole experience is. And I had this feeling where I felt like whatever God is, I understood him. I couldn't put it into words, but I could just feel it. I could feel it deeply to my core. And I could only feel it in that moment. Once I sobered it up, it kind of went away. I wasn't able to like access that. It's like it frees you up and opens your mind up to some other, you probably maybe experienced something like this before. And
yeah, just like that.
Yeah. And so I'm having this experience, and then it just opened up my eyes to like, oh, this is, I can see how a culture doing this for thousands of years and trying to figure out the secrets of their natural world, how religion can form and how people can learn so much about, the introspective aspects of reality. And maybe this is where shamanism comes from and ancient priests. Like, it probably has something to do with this, because I can only imagine if I were to do this for my entire lifetime, the things I would experience and the insights that I might have, right? And so anyways, I start talking to as time goes on, I experiment more and more, and I have different realizations about archaeology. Like, I'll be thinking about these ancient cultures that I'm obsessed with, and I will realize different aspects of their society that I'd never realized before. And it's like things would unlock, and I would get these new perspectives. And I found it like incredibly helpful. It's not like I do this a lot, but I've just found it incredibly helpful. And so I'm talking to this archaeoastronomer, and I'm like, okay, so you study the Pueblo Ancestral people. And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, what kind of psychedelics do they do? And so he lists them out to me, and I'm like, do you ever go out and stargaze at night at these sites that you study, these cliff dwelling sites out in the desert? He's like, oh yeah, all the time. I'm like, do you ever do the psychedelics that they did and then stargaze? And he's like, no, I would never do that. What? And he had this knee-jerk reaction, and it's just it was the boomer in him bleeding through into the archaeology, right? Like, because you have this preconceived notion of drugs. All drugs bad.
All drugs are bad.
There's no distinction between like crack cocaine and weed, right?
Let's talk to Hunter Biden. Listen, that was like listening to Michael Jordan break down basketball. I mean, that was incredible. Yeah.
So
Hunter Biden talking about crack.
Oh, I know, yeah.
Best 3 minutes and 15 seconds in TV. Please continue.
Anyways, yeah. So, to a lot of boomers, there's no distinction between natural plant medicine, medicinal drugs, things that are mostly harmless, non-addictive. Marijuana isn't changing the chemical makeup of your brain to force you to become addicted to it, and it's also not poisoning your body, right? Like alcohol, cigarettes, other drugs do. They just destroy your body. There's no distinction there. And so he had this like knee-jerk reaction where it was like beneath him to ever do something like that. And I talked to him that whole week, and I was like, dude, I'm telling you, man, if you took these natural psychedelics and hallucinogens with everything you know about this culture, I promise you the pathways your brain is going to go down, you're going to have epiphanies about a culture you've studied your entire life, because you're going to view them from a perspective you've never experienced before, and you're gonna be stepping into their shoes. And it was like, I wore him down by the end. I think he's done it since then.
Take this mushroom.
Yeah. And so I forget. We got off onto this because I think that the origins of a lot of civilization is probably found in shamanism and psychedelics. And I think that like this Renaissance archaeology, like independent archaeology, is going to grow and grow and grow. There's already so many people who are researching things on their own and making discoveries on their own. I think maybe one of the best examples is the YouTube channel History for Granite. He's done so much research on the pyramids.
Oh, I've seen that. Yeah, I've seen that channel.
He's done so much research on the pyramids that Egyptologists have acknowledged his discoveries and his perspectives, and these things are going to end up in textbooks.
Wow.
Yeah, he is like the first wedge. There's been all these other people. He is the first wedge to go through.
No, that's cool.
Yeah,
that's good. You got to break through onto each other's sides a little bit. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
we
for
got to find some common ground.
For sure.
And I think I've always cited you as an amazing example of that, because you come from both worlds. You come from understanding some of the alternative perspectives and being genuinely interested in it since you were a little kid, but you were also academically trained under Ed Barnhart at college. Like this is what you're an expertise in from the academic side of it. So you understand the establishment and the anti-establishment, and where both have a point on certain things. Sure. And you've done a really good job to this point in your career of straddling that line and kind of being a peacemaker there. And I hope you continue to do that, because some of the fighting, especially, behind keyboards on Twitter, it's just like, guys, get the fuck, stop this. Get in a room and talk. You don't have to agree on everything.
It's a tough place to be. It's a tough place to be. I used to want to be involved more in the conversation like actively going out and being involved in the conversation. And I've realized the best thing I can do is kind of just retreat back into my space, focus on my own work, and interact with people that want to interact with me, right? Because I'm really not accepted by the alternative side, although I'm cool with a lot of those people. We're all fine. But in the academics, I'm cool with most academics, but I'll never be accepted by them. I'm never going to be part of the club. And so I'm just kind of, out here on my own island.
I like that.
Yeah, I'm just out here on my own island. I've got a few friends. Club. Yeah. And so that's kind of where I'm at. And I think that the appetite for all the fighting is dying off. I think people are just kind of over it because it's not
I hope
productive.
you're right about that, but I disagree. I think people... I think there's people that unfortunately live for it. You know? It's just how it is. And it's human nature. Mm-hmm. We just now have more accessibility than ever to be able to do it instantaneously all day, every day.
Yeah, that's true.
We've kind of evolved to that.
Yeah. So, that's my role is I want to be one of these people in this kind of renaissance of archaeology, sort of doing it on my own. Now, that doesn't mean I have legal permits to go and dig at places, but man, there's been so many artifacts that have been excavated and so many narratives and puzzles that haven't been pieced together yet from, so many artifacts get excavated and then handed over to a museum and never get looked at again. They just sit in a glass case and they sit there forever.
Such a shame.
And they never get studied. But as I've gone around the world and focused on certain cultures, I have noticed patterns between things where I will try to go research it, and no other archaeologist has ever acknowledged certain things that I've noticed. And I've realized this particularly with the Americas, and that the Americas are just very much understudied. And this is kind of what you and I were talking about recently, where I was thinking about doing going to school in Athens. And I always loved the classical world. I grew up loving it just like everybody else did. My grandpa, on his nightstand, he had this book called Western Progress, and it was essentially the origins of Western society all the way up to like Henry V in England, from the pharaohs through Greece and Egypt, through medieval times, all the way to King Henry. And I would look at that book and look at it, and I'd poke through it and look at the pictures and read what I could, much more dense reading than I was able to comprehend. But it was the classical world. It was Egypt, Greece, and Rome that first sparked my love for the ancient world. And it was weird as I was going down the path of committing to go to school for a year. It was going to be about 18 months in Athens, at the University of Athens. I was committed. I was about to pay, and then it was like the day before, I just had this huge wave of guilt come over me, and I felt like I was betraying a world that had given itself to me. Like studying the Americas was not something I ever anticipated that I would do. I always found it interesting, but I never anticipated that I would specialize and go all in on it. But when I changed my major, I was 20 years old. I was going to fail all my marketing classes. I was going to flunk out of college. I had to appeal to the dean to be able to switch to anthropology. They barely let me switch my major. I switched, and in Texas, they breed Mesoamerican archaeologists or Mexican archaeologists that specialize in ancient Mexico, what we've been talking about this whole time. And they just breed that. There really wasn't much about Egypt. I took one part of a semester of a class on Egypt, and I just focused on the Americas. And that's how I met Dr. Ed Barnhart, and that's how I came to learn about, this great archaeologist, Linda Sheely, and it's how I came to learn about the Maya, the Aztecs, the Toltecs, the Zapotecs, and then later on the Inca. And it was like the Americas just opened itself up to me and accepted me. And
you feel a spiritual kinship to it.
Yeah, right. And also my family, they were obsessed with the Spanish gold going back to the 1800s. I talked with Joe about this. I think we maybe even talked about this on my first episode with you in my first conversation. Like all the way back to the 1800s, my family was chasing down Spanish gold, and they were tracking down Spanish gold mines, but they didn't realize that the Spanish gold mines were expanded indigenous mines. And my grandpa had found all these mogollon, which is just a New Mexican tribe, all this pottery and artifacts. And, my family's just deeply involved with the Americas. And then in college, the Americas opened itself up to me, and I became sort of an expert in it in college. And I just felt like, even though I was wanting to return to what my childhood love was, it was the day before I was supposed to pay for my tuition. I had this nasty wave of guilt come over me, and I called Dr. Barnhart and I told him, I don't think I can do it. I don't think I can turn my back on the Americas. I think I'm meant to study it. But I had to come all the way to the point of almost no return to realize that's what I was supposed to do.
How long would school in Athens have been?
18 months. But the thing,
I see what you're saying, and I understand. You felt like it would have been like crossing over literally and figuratively, and now you're going to pour your heart and soul into that, and you're going to leave this behind. But, you know, I don't think you would have ever left that fully behind. And if this is
Maybe
part
not.
of the way the journey need to go for you, then that's great.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I can feel how passionate you are about the Americas and about not wanting to leave that behind. But, you know, one of the things I like about you is you do study all of it. Like you, I mean,
yeah.
the last time you were here in November, the episode didn't come out till end of January, beginning of February. But like, you know, we did 6 hours, 2 episodes of basically, it was the 27,000 year history of Egypt. And it was
fun.
spot the fuck on. I mean, it was amazing, amazing stuff. You were taking me through timelines I didn't even know existed. And so for a guy who can go travel through the jungles of Guatemala and Mexico and break down everything that you've been studying your whole life and continue to find new frontiers, for that same guy to be able to take us over to Egypt, where you've also been and spent time, by the way, and run us through a historical thread that goes beyond even our comprehension of what human history is supposed to be, I think that's an incredible, incredible range to have. And I always want to see you keep that range, which means keeping all of it in the fold together. So if you felt like you were going to get too caught up in some of the more, I don't know, this isn't the term I'm looking for, but mainstream ancient type stuff, whether that be ancient Greece or just ancient Rome, and it's going to pull you away from these other overlooked areas, then great. I'm glad you passed that up.
Yeah. I think the thing was, it was like, it was like, you know how sometimes, I forget what the word is, but sometimes you go looking for something, and something else chooses you.
That's right.
And it's like the universe opens up this door, and this is the door you're meant to walk through. You don't feel it in that moment, but that's the door that's meant for you. You know? Yeah, exactly. And I had to go down the ancient Greece route. I loved Greece, man. Like, the very first thing that got me into ancient history was Brad Pitt's Troy. You know, I love that damn movie, dude.
Took Brad Pitt.
Yeah, it was Brad Pitt.
Fuck the history. Fuck the Odyssey. I needed Brad.
Yeah, so it was I was obsessed with that movie. In fact, as a kid, I memorized every single movement of the sword fights in that movie. I could reenact all of it.
Yeah, I've seen you and your wife role play.
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly.
More than I wanted to see. But
exactly. Yeah,
wearing all the.
Yeah, and
don't post that on social.
No,
again.
I won't post it.
If you want to do an OnlyFans, knock yourself out.
That's a good idea. Actually,
fucking.
I need to start
fucking
working.
Luke Caverns. He's got a porn name over here already.
So I
hit you with that curve.
I loved ancient Greece, and but yeah, it was just, I needed to go that far to the day before I was supposed to pay the tuition to know, okay, hold on. If you're going to go here, you're going to pour your heart and soul into this. It's going to distract from all the America stuff you're doing. How can you go back to that? Like, you just need to, I had to basically return back to the feeling I had when I first started all this, because I'm very much the type of person, I'm very influenced by my academic background, and so much of that was like, you know, so many people in my ear, you really should get a higher degree, you really should get a PhD, you really should specialize, you really should become a particular expert in this one thing. And I was hearing that all the time, and it was the day before I was supposed to pay that I just knew, stop all of that. You got to go back to the feeling that you had when you first started all this, was that you wanted to be like a jack of all trades and study whatever you were interested in. So, you know, whether that's, you know, I was in Cambodia recently, studying ancient Cambodian world, ancient Egypt, Greece, Rome. But, you know, the Americas is kind of like, I guess it's like my journey. You know what I mean? Like, there's so much there that needs to be discovered and uncovered and spoken about. And I think as time goes on, and the last time I was in the fall when I was talking to Danny on his show, and I was talking about the I was talking about the LiDAR maps that I have access to in North America that show all these mound sites in Florida and how I want to focus on North America. And then talking with you about the period just before the revolution and how much history there is with Native Americans. I'm seeing this world of Native American history that isn't dived into enough, and it's like this deep purpose that's there. Whereas with ancient Greece, it's all pretty much understood. You know, there's not a whole lot of mystery. Like there's the Eleusinian mysteries, there's a few things there, but like the Native American world is completely shrouded in mystery.
Yes.
And it just like calls to me and opened itself up to me. Like I didn't ask for it. It just happened in my life by accident, you know, and it's like I was born to do it, you know.
I think so.
I just realized that right at the last moment. Anyways,
it's beautiful, and I agree with you. I think, as you've described it in the past, in episode 175, towards the beginning of that, it's literally in your blood. You know, like you were just saying a few minutes ago, your family was looking for some of this stuff. You know, so it's a part of who you are, and I think there's something to that in how passions get passed down generationally, almost like DNA in a way, and that's there. So, you know, here you are covering that, and you're gonna keep doing that, and that's great, man. Follow your heart. I love it. That's what I want everyone to do.
Yeah, you've got me particularly interested in this topic of now I want to start diving into like Native Americans leading up to the Revolutionary War. Just talking with you a little bit about it in the last couple of days has made me think like, you know, I know a little bit about this, but it's such an interesting realm of history.
Even with it's one of the great things I love talking about when people are in town and we're walking along the Hudson there and looking at Manhattan, especially people who aren't from around here, and they're kind of taking it in and appreciating that. But like even at the Revolutionary War, like the average American even doesn't understand that New York City was the center of that war. It was the linchpin of that. It wasn't Yorktown, which ended up being where, you know, Cornwallis got surrounded in 81 by the Continental Army, and that effectively, it didn't end the war, but it effectively ended the war. It wasn't, you know, some of the southern sites. It wasn't Philadelphia, which was the capital and certainly a key place. You had New York, which, you know, sat on this island. If we're looking at camera 4 right here, you know, you got two rivers parting, fortification to the east that creates Long Island for ships coming directly across from Europe, i.e. invaders. And then when you run up the Hudson, you go up there about an hour and you got the greatest turn and spot for a military fortress in the world, which became West Point, you know, at the time because of its high ground and where it was located vis-a-vis the Hudson River. And it's like so much of what happened right here when this looked very, very different.
Very different.
And now you think about the years leading up to that when there was an insane speed of colonial takeover between the British and the French, and then they end up fighting this war, and caught in the middle of it are all these Native American tribes that existed in all these areas right here. And it's not long ago. This is less than 300 years ago. We're going to do the 250th next year. You know, there is history below your feet everywhere. It may not be like quite as noticeable, combination of noticeable and far back as like when you're walking through Rome.
Yeah.
Sure. But there's a significant amount of like, whoa.
Yeah.
Right beneath your feet right here even.
Yeah,
It's an awesome thing to tell.
People vastly underestimate how complicated the pre-colonial world really was. You know, Squanto, I'm sure you know the story of Squanto. That's a fascinating, it gives you a little window into how complicated this world was before the white man was ever even here. You know, Squanto, I think he's born in the late 1500s because he's captured in like 1614 or something like that, and or maybe 1612 when he's, you know, just a teenager, and he grew up in what is today the late 1500s. Okay, so he grows up in what is today modern-day Massachusetts, and he grows up within these 3 warring tribes that are there. So it gives you this idea. There's already complications here. There's this history of these conflicting tribes just in this small area. Yeah. Imagine what the entire United States looks like at this moment.
He was the tannest dude in Massachusetts, too.
Probably.
I mean, you know, those Irishmen ain't getting sun up there, but he was doing okay.
And
he was onto something.
And so, you know, when he's I believe when he's a teenager or when he's maybe in his early 20s, he gets captured by a trading expedition and he's brought back to England. Imagine that from his perspective. You're being pulled to an alien realm that's vastly technologically superior to you. Like cobblestone streets with giant ships and what, do they have black powder rifles by the early 1600s? I mean, they had obviously crossbows. I don't know if rifles existed, like maybe the little hand cannons existed. Obviously cannons exist. I mean, just like think about did the London Bridge still exist? I don't know. But I mean, just it must have been mind-blowing for him. So he essentially works in London for 10, or I think it's London, but he works in England for 10 years. And then he's finally freed and able to return back to the Americas. He joins a trading expedition, and they essentially they really do him dirty. They drop him off in Newfoundland, and they're like, this is the closest that we can get you. And he's like, oh my God. So that dude solo hasn't been in the Americas for 10 years, builds a boat, sails from Newfoundland to the mainland, and makes his way all the way back home to Massachusetts.
That's insane.
Solos it, as far as I know. When he gets to Massachusetts, he finds the 3 tribes are in complete disarray, and they've been absolutely decimated by disease. So this is around 1620 or so, when the first Thanksgiving is 1621, right?
Yeah, he died in November 1622, so we're coming up on the end.
He died on the second Thanksgiving, by the way. Crazy. So he arrives a few years before the first Thanksgiving, and he finds that his homeland, his own people, his family, they've all died. Most of his friends have died, and the warring tribes that he grew up opposing and hating, they were all decimated, and the land was in complete disarray. Well, what had happened? What have we been talking about? The Spaniards had invaded the Aztec realm, and now disease had spread from Mexico City all the way up the Americas, and had from Florida as well, and had moved towards that northern coast. And just now, 100 years later, it was infecting people in Massachusetts and wiping them all out. And so Squanto returns to find his home like this. So he takes these 3 tribes and he turns them into the Wampanoag Confederation that he is now chief of. Because, I mean, obviously he's the most experienced man. He has so much knowledge of the world now, and he's obviously the most outstanding character in this new land. And this is where I think like this story is just crazy. So one of his informants come to him and they tell him, is it Jamestown? I
think it's Jamestown.
Jamestown. Yeah.
Correct us in the comments.
Yeah. I'm going to get torn up for that. Like I said, my early colonial history, I'm just now getting into it. But they basically come and say, hey, you know, we know that you have a history with these white men. I think that some of these white men, the same people, are living out here on this town on the coastline, and they're suffering. More than half of them died last winter. They don't know how to work the land. You know, this is a completely different type of agriculture than they're used to. You know, they're not used to growing maize and potatoes. And so they haven't figured out the land. And so imagine you're one of these colonists. You're living in this little town. You know there's Native Americans out there. You haven't been attacked by them yet, but you've grown up hearing stories of what they could do to people. And so you're always kind of weary of like what exists inside that tree line that we can't see. Who's watching us, right? And then all of a sudden, this Native American man walks out of the jungle speaking perfect English and walks up to you. Isn't that so weird? Like, you know how mind-blowing that must have been for a guy to walk out and be like, hello, how are you? Speaking perfect English that they would understand. It must have been just utterly jarring. And Squanto, he felt empathy for them. He was the only native there that we know of, and clearly that saw their humanity and felt compelled to help them because they were suffering, even though they were on their land and shouldn't be there. And he probably knew very well from growing up in England what the English intentions were for this new land was to colonize it and spread out. And yet he still helped them. And so he teaches them how to farm the land and everything, saves that town. And then the next year on Christmas, the Spanish influenza, the European influenza, or I'm sorry, not the next year on Thanksgiving, Squanto dies from that European disease on the second
Imagine that. You make it through everything. You find your way back home. You're one of the most cultured men in the world because you've existed across multiple civilizations effectively, and then the flu gets you.
Isn't that weird that highly important men, that guy's up there and one of the most important people that's ever lived. I don't know if you had to rank a top 10,000 human beings that's ever lived. He's into the top 10,000. Yeah. And it's like, isn't it weird? It's like people use up their importance quickly and then they die. You know what I mean?
Wuhan, bro.
It's it's very crazy. Like you look at all of the conquistadors, they all die shortly after this great achievement that they've made. Oriana makes it down the Amazon, survives it, does it again, dies at 35.
It's a lot like I guess it's like a wasp or something when they have, not the people, the actual insect, when they have that climactic moment in the heat of battle after this life of, finding all these places to live and building things as a hive, basically being warriors for the tribe of wasps and bees and everything. And then they have to use their stinger. Yeah. And it's this ultimate moment where it's like their crowning achievement. And, unless it's the dude mowing his lawn that they just ruin his day, if it's actually another type of species that's more on their level, they kill this thing. And it's like that moment in the movie. And then when they do it, they die. Yeah. It's over. Yeah. It's like they release, it's like post-nut clarity, but you're dead.
Yeah. Like they release their potential. Everything they have to be great, it comes out and you die immediately.
And it's
afterwards.
Gone. South Park episode.
How many people does that happen to? It's a lot throughout history. It's a lot. Yeah. Or people have these early, premature, very bizarre deaths, like George Washington's death. You know what I mean? He could have lived quite a bit longer, and then he gets.
But he was pretty old.
Was he?
Like 65, I think.
Okay, 65. But yeah, he could have lived longer.
He was 66.
Or maybe he was. Maybe he was. I think he was maybe like 67 or something.
Yeah,
but
he was right in
But
that
he gets what doctors today think was bronchitis, and then they perform all these crazy procedures on him. Yeah, 67. Yeah. They perform all these crazy procedures on him to try to save his life, and then they just kill him. And if they had just left him alone, he might have survived bronchitis. It's just funny.
That's the story of medicine.
Yeah,
it took a long time to get it there.
Yeah.
Maybe if Ben Franklin had come up with something, they would have jolted him to life.
I know, man. That's a rough world, dude.
I had the Squanto thing just reminds me of this. I had this guy, Andy Powell, in here for episode 202.
I've heard that name.
Okay, so this guy was so cool. He's from the UK, and he was the mayor of a town, I forget the name of it, on the southwest coast of the UK. And I can't remember, we recorded this January 2024, and then I put out the episode. I held that one. I put that one out like end of April 2024, beginning of May. It was like right there. But he came across some sort of historical record where he realized that the lost colony of Roanoke was really the first colony in America before the ones that we know of. And it was really founded in like 1587. And that the guys who founded it were from his town. And so it turned into this odyssey where he literally ended up moving to the United States, where he still lives, and sunk his life into this for the last over 2 decades, covering the story and figuring out what happened, because there's something strange where they came through, went back to Britain, and then came back, and the people they had left there were gone, and they found a sign from, I forget the local tribe, what they were called. I think it starts with a C, but the local Indian tribe, where they wondered if they were like...
Croatoa.
The Croatoans, that's right. And they found a sign that said like Croatoa. And they didn't know if it was like an SOS signal, like we've been kidnapped by them and maybe eaten or whatever the fuck could have happened, killed, maimed, or if the people just joined with the tribe and left forever. And it's like forgotten to history. But he talks about the history of some of the Croatoans that when they met them coming here, they took them back to the UK, and there's records of them being in the UK and like, I don't know, testifying to their experiences and taking in the culture. It's very similar to Squanto, but 100 years before him doing that, over 100 years before him, where, you know, there was this cross-pollination of culture at the highest first level. And, you know, these people got to experience something so outside of what their reality had been before, you know, these Brits just washed up on shore. It's a crazy, crazy story. It's so fascinating because you try to put yourself in the shoes of both parties. And, you know, one's discovering like a land filled with people that have no relation to their culture. And, you know, then the other has the opportunity for some of their people to go back over to where those people came from and see their culture and experience the same thing. And you're just like, it's like a fucked up version of the Spider-Man meme, but you know, they're not both Spider-Man.
Yeah. There's a brilliant book. I think it's called Broken Spears, and it says, I think it's called Broken Spears, and it says it's the Aztec discovery of the Spaniards, and it's written from the Aztec point of view and how bizarre it must have been for Native Americans to see. You know, you never think about it from the Native American point of view, how strange that must have been. But yeah, man. Okay, so in North America, people don't realize this, and this is kind of what we were talking about. There's this underbelly of North American colonial history. I mean, when we think about the colonies, like the average person typically thinks of at the earliest, maybe the Boston Tea Party. You know what I mean? Like typically, like at the earliest, that's kind of where it begins.
Yep.
Dude, there's 200 years of history beneath that. 200 years of history beneath that. 200 years before that, there are already forts way out in North Carolina, near where I live, Winston-Salem. I think it's called San Juan Fort. And the Spaniards put a fort all the way out there. They were going to try to make a claim for all of the southeast United States. This is crazy stuff, dude. So I think it's in the 1530s or maybe it's the 1560s. They put a fort all the way out in North Carolina. And kind of like the colony of Roanoke, they essentially say, hey, guys, I don't know when we're going to be back. So you're just going to have to survive. And we're going to go from the coastline and build inwards to try to get to this fort. You know what I mean? They're going to try to cut off this northern edge and this southern edge and essentially corner off, piecemeal, you know, the southeast U.S. and eventually connect it to Texas. But they had some problems with the Comanches in Texas, so they kind of abandoned that. The Comanches were...
That happens a lot.
Yeah. So this Fort San Juan, if they were able to connect these trade routes from the Mississippi River to the North Carolina coast, like the Outer Banks and over, they would have cornered off the entire southeast United States. We'd all be speaking Spanish today. It would be completely different. But the Cherokee banded together and raided that fort in the middle of the night, like one of the biggest invasions that we know of that's completely overlooked in American history. And it was the Cherokee that pushed the Spaniards out of the southeast United States and destroyed that fort. Had that not ever happened...
Shout out to the Cherokee.
Shout out to the Cherokee. Had that not ever happened, history could look totally different right now. And man, there's all kinds of stories of this. Of the 1500s, Europeans are out exploring North America and trying to conquer it. It's just... And all of these things had to happen exactly the way that they did for American history to turn out the way that it did. It's just... It's an incredible history, dude.
I also talk about it all the time, the exponential bias with which we view history. And what I mean by that is when we look at what we might put, quote unquote, modern history and talk about like post-World War II, we have generations that are still alive. So we look at like the people that were growing up in the 40s and 50s as they're the oldest people in our society. That was so long ago, right? Mm-hmm. But it's not that long ago. The farther back we go, though, we start to squeeze together time. Meaning, By the time we get to thinking about the 1700s, someone who lived in 1725 seems almost the same as someone who lived in 1765. Whereas today, when we look at it, someone who lived in 1965 and someone who lived in 2005, two very different people. But then when you get all the way back to like year zero or 50 AD or 100 AD, we talk about people that lived in 50 AD and 375 AD is like the same thing, and they're fucking 12 generations apart.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The
crazy.
culture is so different. So we look at time through this weird sphere based on our current perspective of it. And so we ignore, as you said, a lot of that, like, that's like almost 200 years of history, basically, before you even have a Revolutionary War.
Yeah.
That's almost the length of our current existence as a country.
Yeah.
Wild.
When it's like it's like the recipe, all of the ingredients are coming together for what the world society is going to become today, and it gets looked over. I remember growing up, you get the basic American history. That's why I say most of the time we start colonial history. You open up, American textbook in high school, and it starts with the Boston Tea Party. There's nothing before that, not really. I mean, maybe there is something there.
Put like the Stamp Act in there.
Yeah. But that's kind of where it begins, in those years leading up to the kicking off of, the Declaration of Independence. And what's funny is you might get something about Columbus in there as well. And it's like I don't know if most people, we all have Columbus in the back of our head. 1492, sails the ocean blue. He discovered the Americas. Boom, American Revolution. You know what I mean? You almost like don't even perceive the fact that there's so many. I mean, it's almost 300 years difference in there, and it's like we just skip directly over that. I think that's so true. I use that saying. I was talking with Mark yesterday about that. I shouted you out. I was like, Julian, he words it so well that the further you go back in time, we start like compacting it together, almost like we're minimizing the files and just clumping them all in because we're just so far removed from it that we minimize the significance of those periods of time.
We can't have that appreciation of how different those things look. Like, imagine plucking a person from year 100 and another person from year 200. They wouldn't even know how to have a conversation with each other.
Yeah,
for sure. We just look at everything as like Moore's law. Well, it's just gotten faster with technology, so it was slower back then. Yeah, but people change.
Think about this. If you put yourself in a room with another guy that's exactly your age, but in 1925, and you're both standing down the street in New York City, you have nothing to relate to each other, nothing in common at all. Your perception of New York City, every single facet of the entire city is utterly, completely different, right? And it's like, man, you think about. I guess this kind of easily gets into like why sometimes I'm just perplexed at how vindictive archaeologists and historians can be about their assertions about the ancient world, because I'm like, dude, I don't even know if you could actually dive into and truly appreciate and understand the mindset of somebody who lived exactly where you do 100 years ago.
You can't. Joe might be able to. He's been writing a play about it that's now off Broadway on New York. Shout out Sacco and Vanzetti, the famous case from the late 1910s into 1920s.
Yeah.
You'd be able to have a conversation with someone back then.
Yeah, I think so. I think I could match up with their transatlantic accent.
Is that really a fake thing, this transatlantic accent? Like, was it something that was only put on for movies and radio? It was like something. It was an accent that they tried to force, right, to sound aristocratic or sound smart.
You want to do it for people, Joe?
You're coming in the morning, and we're going to play, and we're going to have a couple of cheeseburgers with some cigarettes on our cheeseburgers. We're going to put cigarettes on everything because that's what we love here. We love cigarettes.
That's awesome.
Yeah. See, he's like spot on.
Nice job, dude.
He could do it. No, I love that. This is like, he's a stud.
Okay, so is that accent? It was actually artificial, though, right?
Yes.
Like Americans tried to make it work, but it didn't.
Yeah, and for like you said, it was supposed to give an air of aristocracy and just make you sound smarter and more sophisticated, and especially for like showbiz. There's a lot of those guys sounded really stupid with their actual regular voices.
Did they actually take it on though? Meaning like people put it on so much that they used it?
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like you look at
Absolutely.
if you look over in England in high society, there's the accent of the kings, right? They
Yeah,
speak differently.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And they actually talk like that because
they
we're
do.
above society.
Yeah. Oh, it's the worst. It's the
Yeah,
worst.
it's pretty gay, but anyway.
It's not as gay as as the way that so like when you go around the Latin American world and you hear people speak Spanish, it sounds cool, it's masculine, it's romantic, and you go to Spain and they all speak with the lisp.
with the lisp.
¿Cómo estás? Do you know why this happened? It was because one of the Spanish kings had a lisp and he was
he
very
made
embarrassed
everyone
by
do
it,
it?
and he made it trendy. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah. So it
no.
became a trend. If you wanted to seem uppity in high society, you would speak Spanish with a lisp, and that's now why. I think it's Castilian Spanish. I
Yes,
think that's what
I
that's
think
what
that
it
sounds
is.
right.
Yeah, it sounds very gay.
Yeah, Mexicans
But-
sound a lot better.
Oh, it's so much better. It's like
They sound gangster as fuck.
it's gangster. It's romantic.
On brand.
It can be masculine. It can be very feminine. But like Spain Spanish is just like that king really did them all dirty.
Barcelona.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's what it is. That's how
Barcelona,
they say it.
baby.
Barcelona.
that's right. Yeah. God damn it! All those Habsburgs inbreds fucking it up for everyone.
Terrible.
God bless America.
Terrible.